Hi, everybody, and welcome to the NFL Super Bowl recap with Aaron Schatz and Mike Tanier. It is the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. I am Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy, live in Las Vegas, where they're kicking me out of my room in 3 hours. He is Mike Tanier, live in South Jersey, where he was not able to make it to Las Vegas this year. What a Super Bowl 58, the second ever Super Bowl to go to overtime. On one hand, let us celebrate the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. Certainly, that last drive, ice in his veins in overtime to score the winning touchdown. Not a field goal that would tie it and give San Francisco a chance in sudden death. Not a stop, but especially the 4th and 1 run. And then the read option on the next play was like a triple option. Great stuff. Steve Spagnuolo, fantastic job of slowing down the San Francisco offense, in particular slowing down the running game, which nobody thought the Chiefs could really do. On the other hand, let us consider that we played 273 games. And in a way, the champion of the National Football League came down to the ball going off a dude's foot.
Was that McLeod, you mean?
Not McLeod, the other guy, Luter.
Okay.
I thought it was McLeod at first, too, because it's hard to tell from inside the stadium. You see McLeod, like, trying to get the ball, and you're like, why are you even touching that thing? Because you don't realize that it touched off Luter's foot. So points to McLeod for realizing that it touched off Luter's foot.
Right.
But in a way, that's what the game came down to, right? Like without that play, San Francisco probably wins in regulation. That takes nothing away from the greatness of what Kansas City did for Mahomes to tie the game at the end of regulation, for Mahomes to win the game in overtime. I don't want to take anything away from the greatness of that, but there were 7 fumbles in that game, and Kansas City recovered 6 of them. And a couple of those are fumbles the offense normally recovers, like bad snaps. But one of them was a fumble that you almost never recover, which is random touching of a dude's foot.
I hear you. And that was random. You had a punt return fumble by Richie James as well. He had trouble holding on to the ball. You had the Pacheco pitch fumble, where a similar play, we were talking in the Diaspora Discord about how that Raiders loss that we always go back to. There was a similar pitch fumble play in that. And so, if you don't recover that, that's another situation. So
then San Francisco gets the ball in the red zone. DVOA with the opponent adjustments, Kansas City was at 28 and San Francisco was at 19. Without the opponent adjustments, San Francisco was at 9 and Kansas City was at -5.
Wow.
Which is not a big difference. It's mostly a tie. It was mostly a tie game, except Kansas City won the fumble recoveries and Kansas City had the ball in the end.
Kansas City has the ball in the end. It was a game where I felt like the San Francisco 49ers were thoroughly outplaying the Chiefs in the first half.
Yes, in the first half, that was like 10-3, and you were like, San Francisco is doomed because this should have been a 2-score game, and it wasn't. And we knew Kansas City would come back in the second half.
Right. And when you talk about, the great job that the Chiefs did shutting down the 49ers running game, Kyle Shanahan did a pretty good job shutting down the 49ers running game as well, particularly early in the second half where there are 3 straight possessions where I think there was only 1 running play. And it was all 3 and outs by the 49ers.
I was a little surprised that there wasn't more of an attempt to slash into the Kansas City defense. Points to the Kansas City defense for playing well, but McCaffrey did average 4.6 yards per play on runs. And by the end of the game, they were slashing them with the right side and the left side especially.
Yeah.
The outside zone runs, just like we thought they were going to. So points to Shanahan for going for the 4th and 3.
Yes.
When he could have kicked a field goal that would have tied the game, and instead he went for the 4th down, and they got it to George Kittle, who played much less of a role in this game in general than I expected. But, that allowed them to score a touchdown on that drive.
Right. That was a good decision, but I mean, we're going into halftime where Kyle Shanahan is watching the Chiefs roll down the field on their own terms to kick a field goal and not stopping the clock or anything to get the ball back and just be like, I'm good. I'm good with what happens here.
Again, he does that all the time, and I don't understand it at all.
Right. And it winds up being 10-3. It could have been 10-7 at half at that point, based on what things were going. And he was not saying, hey, maybe we on third down, let's force them to execute.
Right, but it also could have been 13-3. It also could have been 13-3 if he used his timeouts correctly and they had the ball back and tried to get it down into Moody field goal range.
Yes, absolutely.
And by the way, props to Jake Moody, who we all doubted going into this game and kicked 2 50-yard field goals, including the longest field goal in NFL Super Bowl history, which was a record that stood
for minutes.
For 15 minutes.
It stood for minutes. Longest rookie kicker field goal in history still, so he's got that one going for him. Kudos to him. Kudos to Mecole Hardman for being the hero at the end and also being the hero earlier. Kudos to all these other guys.
Todd Singer says, I thought the Chiefs wide receivers played much better in the postseason compared to the regular season, and I completely agree. We waited all playoffs for the Chiefs wide receivers to make the big mistake, and it never happened. Mecole Hardman had a false start, and Justin Watson had a ball that was slightly behind him that he sort of dropped, but it was kind of behind him, so I don't know if I would call that a drop.
Yeah.
And otherwise, the Chiefs receivers played really well the whole postseason. And that was what we were waiting for. Was we thought, in the middle of the year, I remember coming on the podcast with you and we said, you know what? This is the Chiefs offense at this point. We can't keep waiting for them to wake up and turn it around. This is who they are. Right. And in the end, they woke up and they turned it around.
How many points did they score yesterday? They settled for field goals a million times. I'm not going to say they woke up and turned it around.
They did, but the receivers were not – the receivers – Pacheco did not get anything. The San Francisco run defense was very strong. Pacheco had only like 3.3 yards per carry or something.
Right.
So
I'll say to a degree our expectations were lowered a little bit for these receivers too, where the big – turnaround is Valdez-Scantling making one catch per game and not dropping it. That's where the expectation is. Watson coming out and doing anything. Watson making any contribution, So, earlier on, I think we were looking at, Tony and Hardman and Sky Moore are going to be these guys who can do end arounds and reverses and make all these plays. And that was what got dropped out of it. It's just like, hey, once in a while you can get the ball to them and it's not going to be a disaster. And that's where we landed at.
Camden Caps asks, how much do you guys think the Dre Greenlaw injury hurt the Niners in overtime? Love the show. Thanks for an awesome year. Thank you, Camden. It hurt them significantly in the second half.
Yeah.
I don't know about overtime in particular, but obviously it was pretty obvious that Travis Kelce did nothing in the first half of that game. And then in the second half of that game, he was finding all kinds of holes in zones.
Yes.
And then what was really surprising was he had a really big play near the end. I think it was a third down conversion where he had Fred Warner in coverage on him on mesh, and Warner couldn't keep up with him. Kelce just exploded off the line, and Kelce got it and got like 20 yards or something and a first down. And that was Warner. That was not Flanagan Foles. It was not Oren Burks. But I do think that you saw in Kelce's big second half, I think you saw the Greenlaw injury.
Yeah. Now, you're going to be doing adjusted games lost for FTN this year, right?
Yes. I've got most of the database, and I have to go through and mark who the starters were and who counts and who doesn't count. But, yeah.
I bet the 49ers are going to wind up being one of the healthiest teams ever this year.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of injuries during the regular season. I thought you were about to tell me that you thought there were going to be more Achilles injuries, because I got a DM on Twitter with someone asking me, are there more Achilles injuries this year than every year? But doesn't it feel like there have been a lot of Achilles injuries this year?
It does. I take it you don't have results yet.
Coral Skipper. No, I don't have results yet. Yeah. Coral Skipper says the most amazing thing about Mahomes is he seems to need to spot his opponent's 10 points before playing his best. Yeah, it is weird. In a way, I said at one point, I tweeted, this was Mahomes' version of Super Bowl 53. The game where the Patriots shut down the Rams and Brady had basically one big drive. Right. I mean, Mahomes had basically two big drives, right? One to tie the game and one to win the game. But in a way, this was his version of Super Bowl 53 in that we came in thinking Mahomes, but the defense really won the game. Bill Houston says, I was very impressed with the Chiefs' defense. They completely shut down Kittle and managed McCaffrey. Right. It was odd how many injuries the 49ers sustained during the game. Well, it was what you just said. I mean, but Debo went down, but then Debo came back immediately. The one injury that really mattered was Feliciano got hurt at one point, but it was the Greenlaw injury that really mattered.
It's the Greenlaw injury. I think Kittle might have been banged up coming into the game, and he got banged up late in the game. But
he had a toe injury, and it turned out I think that the toe injury was more of a big deal than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
That's on me. I was definitely recommending Kittle overs to people, and that turned out not to be the case. I will say one thing that did turn out to be the case was telling people to take long shot 49ers for MVP. Because if the 49ers had won that game, Jawan Jennings very much may have been the MVP.
I believe you. So who'd you vote for MVP of the Super Bowl? I mean,
I didn't. You don't. Auxiliary press box doesn't get a vote for Super Bowl MVP.
I thought you
with the regular press box.
Just by being AP ranking Roger, you don't.
No. The Super Bowl MVP is different. Super Bowl MVP, there's a fan vote, and then they distribute ballots in the press box, but the auxiliary press box doesn't get a vote. That's why I could gamble on it. I could gamble on Super Bowl MVP because I don't have a vote.
Oh, okay. So wait a minute. When I was main press box, I had a vote.
What? Yeah, you should have.
Oops. I have to go back and
as far as I know, that's how it works. Main press box votes for the Super Bowl MVP, and auxiliary press box does not.
I got to go back.
Of course, it was
Joe Flacco or something from the Super Bowl.
Of course, this has been a very interesting week. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. This is our first podcast since it was revealed that I was the lone straggler who did not vote for Lamar Jackson for Most Valuable Player this year.
Warned you.
Which was an interesting couple of days for me. Being outed as a Bills fan, apparently, by Stephen A. Smith. Or outed as a Bills beat writer. Stephen A. Smith outed me as a Bills beat writer.
He knows you so well.
He knows me so well. It's funny because I ran into him earlier in the week, and had I known, I would have introduced myself. Yes. But people want to ask questions about that in the comments. They're welcome to ask. I'm happy. I've gone on Baltimore, Locked on Ravens podcast. And I spoke to the Baltimore Banner. So I'm very willing to talk about my vote. And, I will say everyone in the industry has been very supportive of me, including some names. I won't say who, but that might surprise you. Have been come up to me and said, stick to your guns, vote for who you want to vote for. I will say Mike Sando I ran into, and he was he voted for Lamar Jackson, but he said this was a really hard year to vote for MVP. He said there really was no clear candidate, which is kind of how I felt too.
Right. And my first inclination when I saw this blow up, it blew up minutes after our podcast on Thursday. I think.
No, because it was at night. It was during the honors because I was at dinner. So I went to dinner with Gil Alexander from VSiN and some VSiN people on Thursday night. They were nice enough to treat me to a nice dinner at Carbone. And in the middle of dinner was the NFL honors. And in the middle of dinner is when this broke. And I gave the AP permission to say that it was me because I didn't think it was me. When I gave them permission, to release my votes. but I didn't think that I was the only person because of the fact that 4 people had voted for either Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy for first team All-Pro. So I thought those people will vote for Dak or maybe McCaffrey for MVP.
Right.
And I'm not going to be the only one. So I said to them, go ahead, you can tell people that I voted who I voted for. So it came out like in the middle of dinner. And yeah.
And someone spat in your crab cakes. My first inclination, though, when I heard about the brouhaha is, one, long-time watchers of this podcast, I tried to talk him out of it. You remember. I tried to talk him out of it.
You did. You tried to talk me into Lamar Jackson, absolutely.
And the second element of it is nothing about and this is going back to what Mike Sando said, nothing about this MVP race suggested that there should have been a unanimous choice. Nothing about what Lamar Jackson said, 50 out of 50, everybody is going to go on to this. So I anticipated that whatever you picked, you would be one of 1 or 2 for Josh Allen, 1 or 2 for Brock Purdy, 1 or 2 or 3 for Christian McCaffrey, a stray vote here or there. So it's stunning that the expectation comes in from somebody like Screamin' that Lamar Jackson was so above and beyond everybody else that he deserves this illusory special MVP award, which is a unanimous MVP award, which is not special or different. You're just the MVP no matter what. And that's stunning that people would have blowback and saying, how dare anyone dissent from this obvious choice? That was just very weird.
And Awful Announcing, I think, had a good point. Between social media and the fact that we all discussed this on social media for weeks and the gambling markets, which make Jackson such a prohibitive favorite, you do wonder whether it subconsciously encourages people to go with the betting favorite. And I do not mean to besmirch any of my fellow voters.
Right.
Because I have to assume that everybody sits and agonizes over these votes the way I do. Maybe Tom Brady doesn't. He's got other things to do. He's one of the voters.
Does he though?
Yeah, he's got a vote. Yeah.
Does he have other things to do?
I'm serious. Have other things to do. Well, he's preparing to be on Fox next year. Right. He's listed among the voters as Tom Brady of Fox Sports.
Oh boy.
But I assume that everybody else, thought about this all season. And yeah, it was, in fact, Coral Skipper says, it was like week 16 when everyone agreed that Lamar was the MVP.
Yes.
And at that point, that is when everybody kind of agreed on it. And
the Niners game. The Niners win.
Yeah, the Niners game.
Was I even put a tweet out okay, it's over. That was it. But
I do wonder if, for a lot of people, they kind of decided then, and there is a little bit of the subconscious, going with the Vegas favorite, I guess.
Right. You have this, everyone who's voting has this list that we all see all the time now because the odds are everywhere, and it's hard to differentiate from that. And you talk about people agonizing over it. I'm not so sure because when you look down the ballots, and I know one of the things that Florio put out there was Kobe Turner was left off half of the defensive rookie of the year ballots. I don't know how much agonizing everyone's doing. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah, there are some votes that I definitely. Seth Walder put a list together of votes that he wants to know who did them, like Travis Etienne, Offensive Player of the Year.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
It really is, though. They released the list of voters, so I'm not giving away any secrets. Once upon a time, the All-Pro and MVP voting list was much like the Hall of Fame. It was like one person per market and then a few national people. Right. Now it's almost all national people. It's only a few leftover local people. Interestingly, there's 2 Boston people.
Oh, great.
Because Ben Volen had a vote when he was in Florida, and he kept his vote when he came to Boston. So there's both Tom Curran and Ben Volen are on the panel. But the guy from, I don't remember his name, but who's now at JoeBucksFan.com, who wrote for the Tampa Bay whatever for a long time. I don't know if there's any
I love it, by the way.
I don't know if there's any local Jacksonville people.
Maybe there is, but Jacksonville people leave the Jacksonville market after 2 or 3 years.
Right.
I was I know Jacksonville writers, and when I try to come up with their names, they haven't written for the Jaguars in 3 years. By the way, Joe, I love you. We talk all the time, and I know your name's not Joe. Bucks fan, but no matter how many times we talk, I remember you as Joe Bucks fan.
Oh, Kaufman. That's the name of the guy from the Bucks. He's also on their Hall of Fame committee.
Ira.
Volan and Curran are arguing because of touchdowns to interceptions. Oh, you think that's why they voted for Lamar Jackson, which is totally fair, right? Like, I mean, I don't begrudge them their votes. Certainly.
Right.
Like, I understand why people voted for Lamar Jackson. I put him third. And I definitely would have voted for him in 2019. The numbers for Jackson in 2019 compared to this year are completely different. Yeah. Back to the Super Bowl, Hitchhiker's Pie says Brady couldn't vote for MVP because he was filming a million advertisements. How were the advertisements? I didn't get to see them.
I mean, I was usually on the Diaspora talking to people there. I have no concept of it. I did stop to watch the halftime show, which was fun. It got better and better as it went on, as like 15 people went up there at the end to help usher out.
But I knew Lil Jon was showing up. I didn't realize he lives in Vegas, so that apparently that makes it easy for him to show up. But he showed up.
Who was wearing the helmet? Was that will.i.am in the helmet?
I don't know. I didn't see everybody. I saw Alicia Keys and her, and then I saw Lil Jon and Ludacris. The Ludacris lyrics in that song are very sexual. It is really funny that that's part of a Super Bowl halftime show.
Did he actually sing them, though? Did he actually say them, or was it?
Oh, yeah. The stuff about getting them in their birthday suits? Oh, yeah. Ludacris brought it out. He said all the lyrics.
Yeah, I did not pay attention to any ads. Deadpool trailer looks good. Deadpool looks like it's going to be fun. That's all I have.
Yes, and the one ad that they showed at the stadium was the NFL International ad with Osi Umenyiora at the end.
Oh,
where they're running through the city in Ghana. They're like, the kid is running with his football through a city in Ghana. And then at the end, Osi Umenyiora tells him that now it doesn't matter where you're from. As long as you can play, you can get to the NFL. It was heart touching.
That's sweet.
Coral Skipper says stripper poles at the halftime show. I did not expect that.
I have no idea I don't know what's appropriate and inappropriate anymore. There were pretty women and rappers. I didn't recognize Ludacris because he changed his hairstyle.
Yeah, his hair was he had an afro, I think. But I know his voice and I know that verse. So I mean that's like the one Usher song that's the one Usher song I know well. So
You're old.
I'm much more of a, even though that's our era, right? Those songs are from 20 years ago. I'm much more of an alternative rock and hip hop guy than I am an R&B guy.
Right. So back to the game.
Back to the game. So here's the situation that we're in. And I realize people are slagging me a little bit on Twitter for what I said about wanting the regular season to matter. We are now in the situation where we are like NBA writers, which is that we will go into next season and all year we're going to have to say, but the Chiefs, but the Chiefs, but the Chiefs. Like if the Chiefs are not as good, we're going to have to keep saying, but the Chiefs.
Where have you been for the last 20 years where you've been saying, but the Patriots? Is it because you're in Boston and you're a Patriots fan that you don't realize?
Because the Patriots every year would wake up in October, right? And then they would have a very good regular season for the last 3 months, and then they would go into the playoffs.
The Chiefs had the
difference is the Chiefs didn't have a good last 3 months. They lost to the Raiders on Christmas.
Right. But I still don't see the difference substantively.
Because the numbers always gave the Patriots a good chance to win it all. The Patriots did not generally, like they were always among the top teams during the regular season.
How far off were the Chiefs really in the offseason?
Well, not that far. They were fifth. That's not that far off. That's not too crazy.
Right. It's the same situation. I'll bet you if we went back through DVOA, there are a lot of times where the Patriots were fifth or something like that. And every
2018 was definitely like that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Was like that.
We're both gray bearded. We've been doing this for 20-something years. We've never been in a situation where there wasn't some dynasty up there where you said, well, all roads lead through this. They now just lead through another city. But that's how we're going to have to approach everything. I don't see it as that much different.
They will probably lose Chris Jones.
Yes.
But otherwise, I don't see any reason why they're not the favorites next year.
Well, right now, the betting favorite is the 49ers because there's a much easier path through the NFC.
The easier path, and they're not going to lose their best defensive player, yeah.
And they're not going to lose it. And I probably should have woken up and looked at everybody's over the cap and looked through it. I am trying to make a personal moratorium on Brock Purdy takes indefinitely because I don't want to re-legislate Brock Purdy for the rest of my life and certainly for the next 6 months when he's going to be working for the league minimum for another year guaranteed. He's probably going to be playing with the same supporting cast or something very close to it next year. And he had the lead in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I'm fine with my Brock Purdy take.
Uh-huh.
I think he's like somewhere between the 8th and 10th best quarterback.
Probably somewhere in there.
Right. That's the people who slag Purdy, they think he's lower than that. And the people who worship Purdy, they think he's higher than that. And I think he's in between.
Right. Wait, you have win because of you have win with. He's definitely in the win withs. And you have these moments.
But I think he's near the top of the win. I think he's in the Kirk Cousins category of win withs, top of the win withs. Yes.
Right. And the caveat right now, he's a win with in the Kirk Cousins category, but young enough to improve and playing for minimum wage, which is very different from what you're talking about, a 36-year-old Cousins who spent how many years banging their head against them. And
right.
That
and
is
he's a top win with quarterback who has a lot of width.
Yes, much width. Tons and tons of width. So, I want to just take a deep breath on him and not have to re-litigate his life and value to society and things like that until, frankly, next November or something like that. Let's see where we're at and see if he's improved from this or if he's fallen off from this or if, a couple guys got hurt and we're seeing a different guy or whatever, and just look at something else right now. Because we wake up to the takes and there's already this multitude of Purdy takes. And I'm sorry, it was overtime in the Super Bowl. They were leading by 3 points. I think he's demonstrated.
I would rather talk about Kyle Shanahan and certain game management things than I would to try to slag Brock Purdy for the fact that Chris Jones got to him on 3rd and 4 and he had to throw the ball away and they went for a field goal.
Yes. That's about it. Absolutely.
Although I will say there was another one. Spagnuolo dialed up a slot blitz at the perfect time earlier in the game where McDuffie came in untouched and Purdy had to throw the ball away. And people were talking before the game, some knowledgeable people like Doug Farrar and Greg Cosell about the trouble the 49ers would have with slot blitzes. And I will say that after I was saying that I think McDuffie's a little overrated, he had an amazing game.
He had a great game. They were getting pressure up the middle, too. They were winning. Pennell and Jones were winning in the middle for a lot of that game. And Purdy a couple times did a great job of stepping away from it and getting an accurate pass off, whether it was complete or incomplete. There was one late in the game where he got it to McCaffrey in the slot. And it looks like, not the slot, in the flat. It looks routine until you realize he's got the blitz in his face. He's got to float it over there. He's got to find McCaffrey. And he was doing a heck of a job with that for much of that game.
Hitchhiker Spy points out McDuffie also had the pass breakup to Deebo Samuel in the first quarter. Yeah, I believe that was a shot play. And the 49ers, if I'm the 49ers, and I don't know who they have going into free agency, but improving their offensive line is their number one goal, I think, this offseason.
Draft a guard to help those guards out.
Yeah. This is when the Patriots would do things like draft Logan Mankins at the end of the first round because that was what they needed, even though they were reaching for positional importance. That's what the 49ers need to do. They need to draft a guard at the end of the first round.
Yeah, 31st overall. Their cap situation is fine, by the way. I just pulled it up there. They're selling $3 million over. They can take care of that. All right, there is nothing going this free agency. You got Gregory, gone. Chase Young, gone. Sam Darnold, gone. Kinlaw, you might have to do something with that. Tashawn Gibson, 34 years old.
Darnold might be back. I mean, who else really? I mean, he's got to be a backup somewhere. He might as well go where he has a chance for a ring, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You could probably bring him back on the cheap. He did nothing to help himself out. Juwan Jennings is entering free agency. He's a restricted, though, so you can hold on to him easily. The 49ers can very, very, very easily pretty much keep this team 100% intact.
Yeah, I would definitely draft a guard or a center.
We're going to mock draft a guard or a center to the 49ers.
Or a right tackle. Anything
Right
but Trent
tackles.
Williams. Anything but Trent
Yeah.
Williams. And Kansas City does have some free agents, but again, it feels like they've got Reed and they've got Mahomes, and we're going to be talking about them all next year. It doesn't matter what they do in the regular season, that they're going to be dangerous come the playoff time. I mean, the fact is that Buffalo win was really tight. And this win in the Super Bowl, I mean, it went to overtime. It was really tight.
Yes.
These were not huge dominate. They are not the 1989 San Francisco 49ers.
No.
But when the chips were down, they made it happen. So all power to them.
Right. And again, I don't see a lot of this is not that much different from what we've been dealing with the Patriots for many, many, many years, in that they change out roster guys and everything, and they're still a team to beat. The entire playoffs were tight. Everything the 49ers did was tight too.
Yes.
So you talk about the regular season mattering. It does. It matters because you get to the playoffs and you get the opportunity to do these things. And then
you have a lot of close games. I mean, the whole playoffs wasn't like Kansas City's win over Miami was pretty big.
No, that was.
And their win over Baltimore, even though their win over Baltimore only came down to one score in the end, they were pretty much in control of that game the whole time. Especially once Zay Flowers fumbled, that was not as close. But this Super Bowl was very, very, very close.
It was very
right. That if you're going to overtime and both teams score in overtime, that's a close.
Right. Arguably the closest ever, because that has never happened before, because it wasn't possible. By the way, our buddy, Mike Frazier, got a shout out from Andy Reid.
Oh, did he? That's great.
Yeah.
Mike, for those who don't know, he's Andy Reid's stats guy and has been since Philadelphia.
Right. And he's been gracious to us many times in the past. Andy talked about, and it was gone over in The Athletic elsewhere, since the start of the preseason, the Chiefs had a plan for if they were in overtime in the Super Bowl. It's that Andy Reid binders full of probabilities thing that's been going on for many, many years, where they said, oh, if we get to the Super Bowl and it's overtime, we're going to try to give the ball to the opponent first and then respond. And if they score a touchdown, we'll go score a touchdown, go for two. And Andy Reid said afterwards, it was not any decision that he had made, and he had turned it over to Mike Frazier. And Mike Frazier had made the determination of what that strategy was going to be.
Yeah, the ESPN analytics people believe that it's basically the same, that your odds of winning are the same whether you take the ball or kick.
Okay.
Because on one hand, if you have the ball first, it means you have the ball third.
Right.
Which means that you have the ball first once it goes to sudden death. On the other hand, if you have the ball second, you know what the first team did.
Yes.
And if they scored a touchdown and you score a touchdown, you should go for two.
Right.
Because it's better to have a 50-50 shot to win than to give the other team the chance to win with a field goal.
Sudden death. And maybe, it's such a tiny probability that it doesn't matter. But it speaks to everyone on the team having the peace of mind that there's a plan, that the coaching staff has a plan.
The preparation. And it ended up going the way that they wanted. Because San Francisco chose to take the ball first.
Right. And everybody on the Chiefs seemed to understand this except Mecole. But Mecole didn't have to understand. He just had to catch the ball, and he did.
Just had to catch the ball. Bill Houston says someone needs to do a fine analysis on why teams do not run on the Chiefs, despite it being their biggest weakness. And they're going to lose both Jones and Gay this offseason, probably.
Yeah.
They can replace Willie Gay easily, honestly. I'm not worried about that one. Chris Jones is a thing. That's a loss.
Yes.
He's the one they have to give all the money to.
Yeah.
So, any words to wrap up? What do you think?
Well, I was going to say, Chris Jones looked good in that Detroit Lions uniform next year. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Right. Well, the trick is the Lions have a lot of cap space, so whenever there's somebody famous, just mock them to the Lions. That's how it's going to go. I don't have any like words of wisdom at this point. We're in a dynasty again. It's different than the Patriots dynasty was, but the Patriots dynasty I think looked very different in 2004, 2005 than it looked like at the end. And
right. I mean, it developed over time. And the other thing is, as much as we all want to believe the Chiefs are inevitable, the Patriots went 10 years without winning a title, even though you had to worry about them every single year except the year that Brady was injured. So the fact is, we could now go a few years where the Chiefs are just in the playoffs every year, but somebody beats them close, and that it's, the Patriots had a long period where they didn't win. There were upsets. So,
And during that period were some of their best teams in terms of statistics and DVOA and things like that were in that record, because sometimes the postseason brings surprises.
Which is true of the Chiefs too, because the best Chiefs team of this run is 2018. The year they lost to Brady. The year they lost to Brady in overtime. Offensively, that was clearly Mahomes' best year. And so that's the year they didn't win.
Right.
It happens all the time. The Colts were better in 04 and 05 than they were in 06. Patriots were better in 2007, but didn't win until 2014. Like, it happens all the time where your best year and the year that you win the title are not necessarily the same. They happen even lose the title, like the Rams. If you look back, the Rams are so much better in 78 and 77 and 80, and then they had a bad year in 79. Yet that's the year they made it to the Super Bowl. So
the Packers with Rodgers, the 15-1 year. The 87 Niners don't count. Scabs.
87 49ers.
Scabs.
No. They're by far the best team in the league, even if you take the Scabs out. Even if you take the Scab games out.
Yeah.
They were awesome even if you take the Scab games out. It was a weird year because Scabs. But they're really good. Even if you only count the 12 games that really mattered, they're really good.
Yeah. I believe you.
That's where we are with the Chiefs. I mean, we're in a dynasty, and they're going to be dangerous every year, and we all just have to deal with it. So we're going to take off for the next couple of weeks, folks, and then we are going to be back around Combine time. Mike and I are both going to be in Indianapolis for the Combine, and we'll talk about prospects, and we'll talk about free agency. And please make sure, if you haven't yet, to subscribe to Mike's new Substack, which is miketanier.substack.com. I want you to subscribe to FTN Fantasy also, but especially, please do subscribe to Mike's Substack so he can make a living.
You can squeeze both of them in. You get all the content and all the stats from Aaron and the FTN crew, and then you get my unique take on things. And starting tomorrow to all subscribers, free and paid, you'll get part 1 of the top 20 worst coaching hires of the 21st century. I also have a nonsense index coming up later in the week where we'll talk about what's coming up for Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields and all those other fun stories. And that's coming up, I believe, on Thursday. I have that scheduled for. And remember the top 5 quarterbacks for every team?
Yes, we did that. God, that was like a dozen years ago.
2011. Well, it was so long ago that Russell Wilson, I believe, ranked 4th among the Seahawks quarterbacks. That's how long ago it was. So it's time to refresh that. We'll be doing that throughout the offseason, in addition to, regular coverage of things that are happening in the NFL. So that's at the Substack, Too Deep Zone. Come check it out. Become a subscriber.
All right. That does it for today's Shots at Tanier NFL podcast, brought to you by FTN Fantasy. And please do watch our Twitter and Threads feeds for when our next show is going to be, but it's probably going to be during the Combine. So come and listen to us then. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl. It's been a great season. Thanks a lot for reading us. Thanks a lot for watching and listening to the show. We'll see you later.